Welcome here, everyone. Very excited to have everyone out tonight, even with the storm that may have affected a few, but you guys are still here. So exciting. We're going to wait for the last few people to trickle on in, but we have a very exciting program for you guys, some updates on camp, and some stories from people who are younger and some people who have been around for a little bit longer, and just some exciting stuff for everyone to enjoy tonight. Okay, the doors are closing, so it's time to start going. So my name is Spencer Kushner, camp name Cousteau. I am currently the office manager at camp. But yeah, so this evening we have some camper testimonies along with a parent/staff testimonies, and then a little 80th presentation because, as many of you know, we had our 80th anniversary this past summer, which is, woo! Very exciting stuff. And so I'm going to invite Anna Jansen on up, and she's going to start us off.
Okay, so we're going to start today with our land acknowledgement. So we begin our gathering today by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory and our camp operates on Treaty 3 territory, which is the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Sioux, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, Dene, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I invite us to now take a moment to acknowledge that we live on traditional territories, some ceded and some unceded. As followers of Jesus, we acknowledge our shared part in the pain and brokenness that the church at large has perpetuated towards Indigenous peoples on Turtle Island. We acknowledge and learn from the good work they are doing in reclaiming their cultures that reflect Creator's image. We also remember the work of Jesus Christ on the cross and call to his followers to be reconcilers. As InterVarsity Canada, we affirm our commitment to pursue reconciliation with one another, with Indigenous peoples, and to call our movement to be people of shalom and peace. I now invite Robin Shugard up to the stage to introduce the year-round team.
I'll introduce you first. Hi, my name is Robin Shugart. I'm the Manitoba Campus Director with InterVarsity, and so I have been invited to introduce the year-round team because I have the pleasure of working with them year-round. So I'm going to start by introducing Anna Jansen, who is the camp registrar. I'm next going to call up Spencer Kushner, who is the office manager. You've also the MC tonight. And I'll invite up Nate Rempel. Nate is the program director. We can clap for these people, I think. Pete Dearborn is the Generation to Generation director. Neil Stewart is one of the co-directors, and he is joined by Sharon Stewart, who is co-director and food service director. Very important. So this is the amazing year-round team, and we're so grateful for their ministry, both in the summer and also year-round to Pioneer Camp. You can also, wait. Sure. I'll also introduce Dave Burrell and Hannah Guerrero, who are on our campus team. You want me to join them? It's a photo op.
It's a photo opportunity. Let's get a little more. I also just want to let you know, the whole campus team was out at camp making summer camp happen this summer. So we're so glad to be a big team like this.
So I'm going to let everyone else go, but Dave is going to stay up here and talk to you about campus and camp and how they've been working together.
Hi. My first time at Pioneer Camp was in 1992, and they were celebrating their 50th anniversary. And one thing I love about camp is that whether you're going for the first time as a camper or like me, I was going as a student leader with campus ministry, you're creating like these 4 forever moments. I like to think of them as 4 forever moments because they're just moments that stay with you for forever. And one of them, well, two of them for me. One was praying. I remember praying out loud in a group with other student leaders for the first time in my life at the old staff lounge on Bunny Point. And then a few years later, we had the honor of having David Whitcomb come and speak to us. And it was very influential. He actually said, he said to me that he thought I had a pastoral spirit, a pastoral heart. And that really helped launch me into doing campus ministry a few years later. And so it's just, you get all these amazing 4 forever moments around Pioneer Camp. And so I'm up here tonight to share a few ways that camp and campus are working together. And, I would like to say that I find it fascinating. I was thinking about this, how some of the history of InterVarsity in Winnipeg and Manitoba runs through Garfield Street, because not only did Hildy Leverton live there for many, many years, my family and I have lived on that same street just a few blocks north for like 15 years now ourselves. So Garfield Street and InterVarsity is a great combination. Camp and campus is also a great combination. We've really enjoyed connecting with one another. We've shared lots of stories with one another and served together at things like Mission Fest, where we had a booth together. I know that Nate is working with Hannah at University of Manitoba this year, connecting with students, both regularly, like university students and camp, some of the camp family that's studying at University of Manitoba out there. And as Neil had just said briefly at the mic, our campus team was out at the Portage, the brand new Portage camp that they ran for the first time last summer, at the end of summer, and we created more 4 forever memories and moments, coming together to do classic things like, the morning dip and skits, camper skits, cabin skits, and one of my highlights was jumping off the P3, probably for the last time. So, I just wanted to share some of the ways that camp and campus are working together in InterVarsity here in Manitoba. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing those moments with us. Next, I'm going to invite up Amelia. She is a camper who has been at camp since she's been very, very little. And through the years, we have watched her grow. And this year, she's going on her first river trip, which is super exciting. But she's going to share some of her camper experiences and how camp has affected her life. So come on up, Amelia.
Hi. Okay. I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me this evening. And I'm really glad to share my experience with the camp as a camper. So I've been going to MPC for over 10 years, since I was around 3 years old, sometimes with my family as well, alone. And I would say no matter which camp session I attended, I would always, whether I was running around the island with other children, out on the lake learning how to do a J-stroke, or just having the best laughs with my new friends, under tents, under the stars, I always left with one understanding, that I was complete and no other place could make me feel so happy as camp did. With the support of staff throughout my time at camp, I've learned that everyone at MPC loves each other. Everyone helps out. Everyone knows their purpose there. I look up to them tremendously. They've taught me that it's okay to be who I am. It's okay to embrace yourself no matter what. And if you're going through any challenges, they'll help you get through them because everyone is there for you, always. I hope that one day I can be there for others the way staff has been there for me. Now, every time that I leave camp, it's the only thing on my mind, and I always want to go back. You always hear me saying, like, can it just be summer already? You know, because I miss it so much. And there will never be anything that will compare to Manitoba Pioneer Camp. My sense of belonging there it runs so deep. And I've learned so much about my interests, how to try new things, and how to accept and appreciate things in my life. And most of all, my faith in God has grown. Not only is camp the most fun part of my summer, but I learned so much. I feel so safe, and I know that I'm loved there. I'm beyond grateful to be able to attend, and I look forward to many awesome summers ahead. And this summer, I hope to be at camp as a staff member helping Sharon in the kitchen. Thank you, and I hope you all have a nice evening.
Thank you, Amelia. We are looking forward to you in the kitchen this summer as well. Next, we have Tracy Curl is going to be coming up. She was our Girls Camp director this past year, but she is also a parent of 2 kids who have gone through the program and one who is currently still in the camper cycle. So I am inviting up Tracy next.
Good evening. So I am a Pioneer Camp parent. All 3 of our kids have been to Manitoba Pioneer Camp. Our oldest son, Noah, went to Classic Boys back in August of 2012 and has been back every summer since. Our daughter, Abigail, went to sailing camp that same summer in 2012, and actually that was her only time at MPC, but it turns out she's now involved in Alberta Pioneer Camp. Our youngest, Tim, his first experience was at family camp back in, we think it was 2014 or 15, and he's currently in childcare helping out. MPC means a lot to our family. When I think about it from the perspective of as a parent, I'm so grateful for the experiences that my children have had. Opportunities to develop new skills, to make friends, and to draw near to God in the beauty of creation. There's a lot that I could talk about, but I want to focus on one specific week of camp, and that's Boys 1 this past summer. You might ask why? Why that one? Well, because we got to send Tim off to his first boys camp on McKinnon with Noah, his big brother, being the director. Like, who gets to do that? So, through that week of Boys 1, I can really see the tremendous impact that MPC has had on both of them. Well, for Noah, he did LIT back in 2013 and has been on staff every summer since, except, of course, 2020. And through that, he's gained significant leadership skills, from cabin leading to wilderness survival to program directing, et cetera, et cetera. And I really see that it's helped him grow in confidence and in competency. He's also deepened his understanding of the gospel. Graham McFarland, and was given the opportunity to be the one to connect the gospel to the story of Robin Hood this summer through the table talks, right, at Boys 1. And Tim got to hear it, so I got to ask him, like, how did Noah do? And he said, oh yeah, he did a good job. So that's good to know. It's also been fun to hear about Noah working alongside so many of his friends, as the community from Pioneer Camp is so important to him. But I will tell you, remember I'm a camp parent, right? And I was a little concerned about the experience that Tim was going to have. Because I'm the type of parent and just human being who likes to know what's going on. So what can you do from home, right? Well, the one thing you can track while your kids are away is the weather, right? I don't know, any camp parents here are every day, Shoal Lake, 40, what's going on? And it wasn't good. You know, humidex or whatever, 40, thunderstorms. I was like, oh man, how are, like, both from the camper and the director perspective, like, how are they handling this? So, you know, would Tim enjoy it, I wondered? So I got there on Friday, and I'm like, how was it? Well, yes, he enjoyed it tremendously. And you know, for me, that's pretty surprising because he got a headache from the heat. It poured rain on their overnight canoe trip, and yeah, anyway, and he was also dealing with some seasonal allergies. So I'm thinking it must have been pretty good because he loved it. He loved the adventure, the camaraderie, the study of scripture, the gluten-free food. Like, as a parent, that's so important, right? And being outside so much. He really embraced what MPC had to offer, and he came home wanting to go back, like Amelia says, right? Wanting to go back, so he's registered for Classic for this summer. So I thought, oh, I'm showing up in front of people talking about Tim. I better tell him what I said. And, oh, Daniel, there you are. The canoe, the fire, the whole thing. Yeah, anyway. When it was pouring rain, Daniel built a fire under a canoe. Anyway, you can talk to him about that. But, so I'm like, I wonder how Tim's going to feel about what I say. So I read this to him in the car on our way here. And he was like, all that stuff, overcoming the challenges, that's what made it even better. So there you go. That's what camp's about. So watching the impact of camp on our children is part of the reason that I ended up volunteering at MPC. And this past summer, as Spencer said, I've had the privilege of directing girls' camp. Well, there's many amazing moments from this summer that I'd be happy to share with you of God's provision, of the fantastic team we worked with, and just plain old fun. I want to leave you with one snapshot, and that is, it comes from the canoe over canoe rescue training that happens on the first full day of camp. So imagine with me, girls in towels are walking towards the waterfront. They're looking hesitant and nervous. You hear murmurings like, do we really have to do this? And the little ones being like, I'm so scared. And then, after the leaders gently and with clear instruction lead them through the exercise of being flipped, we saw that in the video before, being flipped and then rescued from the water, a transformation takes place. Dripping wet and with big smiles on their faces, the girls had an air of confidence as they climbed up the waterfront steps. It was such a joy to behold. And for me as volunteer staff, that summarizes so much of our hopes and prayers for campers. To give them this opportunity with the help of trusted leaders who reflect to them the love of Jesus and help them to face their fears and find out, I can do this. All the while being held in God's gracious care and in the prayers of so many who won't even step foot on the island that summer and may not have in many years. That's the beauty of camp to me. It's a community in Christ that expands beyond the season, like beyond that specific time, in which campers and staff continue to grow in confidence, in competence, and in connection to God and to each other. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy. So next we're going to have Pete Dearborn come on up, and he's going to tell us about the Generation to Generation projects and how that is going along.
Yeah, good to see you all, and it's good to report on generation to generation. Daniel 4 says, how great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. So I am the director of Generation to Generation, and I am hoping that these words come true for my work as the Generation to Generation director. Just spontaneously, I remember one of these, and I see Donna Craker here, and Eileen Craker, how many generations did we have up here, Donna, when you all came up here? 3 generations involved with the Craker family. That just came to mind. I should have asked you for those names. Pioneer Camp is absolutely critical. I think it's needed more now than ever before. Young people are craving authentic community. If there's one thing that happens, in fact, I was just reflecting on this with a general director of camp that I will always deeply appreciate, Jeff Friesen, who's sitting underneath back there. We talked about how just before you all got here, we talked about how the place of Manitoba Pioneer Camp, being on an island, kind of forces you into community, forces you to relate in ways you wouldn't normally do. There's no distractions, there's no roads out of camp. When you land there, you are who you are. Masks come off by about the second day, and the real you. And then in the crucible of camp and living in those close quarters together, camp also forces you to you don't just do your part. Everybody helps each other. When shipment comes, you all help. Whether it's food or lumber, cleanup comes at the end of the camp, you all do your thing. So it forces you into community. And I love the aspect of generation to generation. Young people, staff, there's lots, well, there's lots of young people out there that need what I have had at Manitoba Pioneer Camp, what Amelia has had at Manitoba Pioneer Camp. More now than ever before. Where was community? Community was completely lost over COVID. And kids come to camp so hungry for authentic, genuine community, where they discover who they are, their strengths, their weaknesses. And in that crucible, believe me, it's happened to me, still happens to me, your rough edges kind of get rubbed off. And I still have lots left, but I've lost a few of them. So I'm glad that I can be part of generation to generation, and I'm hoping we can all say how great are his signs and how mighty are his wonders. His dominion is from generation to generation. This year we completed our leadership center. I can see this picture. That's kind of weird and wonderful. There I am. What's that? Bring back the staff. This year, the first phase of generation to generation was the completion of our leadership center. And I'm going to talk about Bill Mason Place in a bit, except to say Bill Mason Place, which is actually part of the next phase of generation to generation, was designed by a really young architecture student by the name of Herb Entz. And he's sitting right there, and he designed, in his final year of teaching at the University of Manitoba, he designed the Leadership Center. I'm sure there's a picture of it there that you're looking at from inside and outside. It's a spectacular building, thanks to Herb's design. I had a role in it, keeping things going, calling up workers and stuff like that. But I think it's really kind of cool that Herb Entz designed Bill Mason Place and now Leadership Center, and we're now going to return back to Bill Mason Place as part of Phase 2, Generation to Generation. So we completed it this year. There's just amazing stories behind that completion, including the one this fall. We only got the final chimney on this fall, and it had to be a custom-made stainless steel chimney for the stone fireplace that we saved, and quite expensive to build. A thick-walled stainless steel chimney, and the manufacturer in this small town that's close to where I live ended up not charging us. And then I needed somebody to help install it, and when he got to camp and experienced the community of camp, he didn't charge us. So that last part was completely a gift, like so many other parts. The total budget for that, by the way, was very close to $260,000. And we finished within that budget. So on now to the next part of generation to generation. Let me just say, maybe I can say a little bit about, there is Bill Mason Place, you're all looking at it. And really it is in significant need. And I want to do it. Here's another generation to generation link. Albert LeBoon was my first director that I worked under. He was actually, frankly, totally responsible for me getting my camp name Drifter. It's all his fault, truly is. But he mentored me. He taught me about boys camp, even though he hadn't been there. And when he left camp, he left us. His legacy was leaving us Bill Mason Place, designed by Herb ends. And I like what Graham said. Various people have said it aids our worship. Bill Mason Place, looking out over the lake, aids our worship. And that's what buildings do if they're designed with purpose. This summer we started to use the Leadership Center, and it was marvelous for our staff meetings, small group trainings. We didn't have a working fireplace. That came late in the fall. But we were already using the Leadership Center, and it aids us in what we do. I've really bought into the idea that buildings say something, and the Leadership Center and Bill Mason Place are two treasures. So we need to replace all the windows on Bill Mason Place. Every one of them, they've lasted 30 years, which is actually longer than most wooden framed windows last. We've already made contact with Lone Windows. We're not sure if that will end up helping us. We've already taken some steps towards that. And so Bill Mason Place, we will replace all the windows. We'll repair the deck and replace all the siding on the building and refinish the floor. That was Albert Laboon's last statement to camp, the last gift from Albert Laboon, in addition to his training, an influence that he had on me. And I've tried to model that. I think with ministry, you actually, whenever somebody goes, they kind of live on in the people that they've impacted. And Albert had an amazing impact on my life in so many ways, and certainly modeled hard work. So now I have a chance. And as I pass the leadership baton on to Neil and Sharon, I want to end well and pass on what Albert passed on to me, generation to generation, to generation to generation. I think the Leadership Center does communicate. We're here. We're here. If I have a growing conviction about anything, in my time as the director, and then including the building of the Leadership Center, there's just too many miracles, just too many answered prayers. I mean, I said one about the stainless steel chimney. The stones are another. I could list workers showing up with almost hours to spare. My conclusion that I've never felt stronger than tonight is that God is not finished using Manitoba Pioneer Camp to influence people's lives with the gospel and through a faith community. God is not finished with it. And so we need to be faithful. We need to be faithful to carry it on generation to generation. And God's got great plans for it in store. And so he has sustained it for 80 years. And I'm trusting that it will be sustained again, generation to generation. In addition to Bill Mason Place, we have to replace the beach wall. And that's crumbling. So all of these things, there's no doubt that they're not kind of important. They're absolutely necessary. Bill Mason Place actually the windows must be replaced. The wall is actually falling down. So we're gonna do that. Sadly, we need to replace the Pioneer 3. And we're hoping to do that by actually selling the Pioneer 3 and using that money, but we're not sure what we'll get for it or how much it'll cost to move it to whoever wants to buy it. By the way, in a funny kind of way, somebody from Southern California has already expressed interest until I told him, do you realize it's frozen in a lake? And do you realize how far it is? Anyway, and also somebody from the Northwest Territories. So we actually have had we've had two serious inquiries about the Pioneer 3. I don't know why they're so far away, but they are. So we're going to replace some boats. We're going to replace the wall. We're going to do the renovation work on Bill Mason Place. It will be in memory of Albert Laboon, and we will acknowledge that when we have a recommissioning of Bill Mason Place. And the last thing, we're working towards bringing bulk propane to the island. I sort of second-guessed that. There's too many funny stories, some of which we've heard tonight, some of which Calvin has heard, which he wants to forget already, about what it's like living by 100-pound propane tanks, and some of the things that have happened with those things. So those things make up phase 2 of generation to generation. We're looking to bring in bulk propane, buy some boats, repair the wall, and renovate Bill Mason Place. Obvious thank you to many of you who helped make the Leadership Center possible with your donations, with your hands-on help. And how many summers? It was delayed over COVID, plus we had some delays with our stonemasons. So we had 2 or 3 spring celebrations where Herb was up here talking about it with lots of posters on the back. I've said thanks to Herb lots, but the hours was enormous. Could we, now that it's finished, could we say thanks to Herb? thanks to all of you who helped make that building possible. And now let's complete phase 2 and be sure Pioneer Camp stays generation to generation.
Pete, I'm going to get you to stay here for a little bit longer, and I'm going to invite Calvin and Kim up for a little surprise for you.
So my name is Calvin Bennett, but thank you, Pete, for being here. And 80 years is a heck of a celebration. I think we just need to acknowledge that 80 years for anything to survive is just a... And it's a remarkable testament to this community and everything else. I remember about 10 years ago when I got involved. People remember this well. You know, it wasn't probably the high point of Manitoba Pioneer Camp, but I think things have gone so tremendously well. And Pete, I think you've been involved for probably about 40 of those 80 years. So I give you, I give you a barely passing grade on that. So there you go. No, I mean, where's your sense of commitment? Seriously. No, it is a real privilege for us to come up and say thank you to Pete, and there's a special award that Kim will give to him in a moment that he's been recognized from the Canadian Camping Association. So we just wanted to acknowledge that publicly to him as well, and I just wanted to say thank you to you, Pete. I consider you a great friend. It's been great to be a partner in ministry with you, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your commitment. There is a great cloud of witnesses that will be in heaven because of the lifetime of commitment that you have put into, into camp in general, but to Manitoba Pioneer. And truly, thank you, Peter. Thank you. Thank you, Pete.
Good evening. My name is Kim Scherger. I'm Executive Director for Manitoba Camping Association, of which Manitoba Pioneer Camp is a part of. And one of the things I want to say before what I came here to say is, as you were talking, Pete, about community, one thing that comes to mind is I used to direct Luther Village Camp in northwestern Ontario, so Pioneer is kind of one of our neighbors, although it was still quite a distance away. And one of the first times that I think the first time actually I was at Pioneer Camp, we were there to do the accreditation visit, and I remember you greeting us as we came off the boat and using washrooms and things. And you just really made us all feel absorbed into the camp life. We were there as the accreditation team, and we were coming to just look and to visit the site to make sure things were happening as Pete had said they were, and they were. It was incredible just how he made us feel such a part of community, like with our first steps onto land after being off the boat. So community is a huge part of who you are, so thank you for that. Earlier this week, we had a conference for Manitoba Camping Association and Christian Camping International. Neil was there, Pete was there, Nate was there. Was there anyone else from your camp? I feel like that was the three of you. That was the three. Yeah? Okay. And there, while we were there, we recognized Pete for an award that he won from the Canadian Camping Association. And it was an idea, I think, of both Neil and Sharon's to present that tonight in front of Pete's people, who are all of you. And so this is the information that was submitted to Canadian Camping Association, and we'll show the award as well for him. Pete Drifter, now I know why you were called Drifter, thank you. Pete Drifter Dearborn has served at Manitoba Pioneer Camp for nearly 30 years, but more like 40 years, is what it sounds like. Okay. Before that, Pete's first camp was Moose Lake in Manitoba, and he also has worked at Crow's Nest Lake Bible Camp in Alberta and at Stony Lake Bible Camp in Saskatchewan. Pete has hosted the MCA camps, busloads of directors at Manitoba Pioneer Camp for day trips and to have training sessions for directors after the tour with regards to such topics as boat safety, construction, policies, and other things. He has led training events and discussion groups for the MCA and the CCI at our Provincial Camping Association conferences over the years, and Pete is the one who was always wise in education and explanation. Pete was instrumental in working with the MCA and Transport Canada when there were big issues around boat safety and licensing. He helped educate camps, discuss the issues with Transport Canada on behalf of the MCA, in regards to changes for boating and licensing. Some of these took place at our MCA conferences over a few years and with the MCA Executive Director and Board. Pete has also been a part of accreditation visits over the years for the MCA. So you've heard just a very in general, you know Pete more personally about his involvement with camp and all the people who he has affected, both the leadership team and campers who have come to camp. And Pete is one of those reasons why camps are so productive in what they do and the things that they do for campers and staff across the province. So Pete, I want to congratulate you and again present this lovely award to you from the Canadian Camping Association. If I can get it out. Yeah. It's a absolutely gorgeous award. You'll have to come see it close up afterwards, but Pete, here is a word of excellence to you from the Canadian Camping Association.
Wow. I would reflect on, as I may, because I was thinking about this, all the mentors in my life. I went to Moose Lake. Everybody, anytime I get a mic in my church knows that's a dangerous thing. I went to Moose Lake in my first year. The director there mentored me in my spiritual growth, taught me an appreciation of nature, believe it or not. We went out and looked at stars at night, and learned constellations, and you could tell the gospel through the constellations. He got me into birding, and frankly, even got me into wildflower identification. And then he also modeled to me what fun is. And for some reason, it just came to mind this week that I worked there over winter. First youth group that showed up for winter said, what do these young people want in high school? I want to have fun. Well, they don't want to, Friday night, they're not going to go to sleep. So true story, he said, let's start our programming at 10 and go till about 2 in the morning and just have a kind of all-night party with these students. So that's what I learned from him. You can be crazy and do fun stuff. I went to Crow's Nest Lake and I learned about wilderness tripping, except it was in the mountains with backpacking, but still the same principles. And I learned leadership because I was in charge of their LIT program and directed some individual camps. And I actually took polar bear dip there. It really was. You can't swim in Crow's Nest Lake. There's actually mountain water constantly coming in there. If you swim, you need a safety boat. We did a morning dip there. So that's what I learned from Crow's Nest Lake. I went to a Stony Lake Bible Camp, Canadian Sunday School Mission. I learned more about the gospel there. And then I also went to a Bird River Bible Camp and worked there. And all of them mentored and trained me. And then I ended up at MPC. So I'm grateful for all my mentors. Albert Laboon, I've already mentioned. Let's keep doing this, folks, please. We have to keep doing what we're doing. There's kids out there that need what we have. And so thank you for standing with me. And Kim, thank you for this award. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Pete, for all your years of serving at camp. I am so happy that I'm able to serve with you on the year-round team. The first time I met Pete was he first picked me up from the docks at Band 39, but then a few days later he picked me up from Big Shoal, and the P3 was coming from very far away, very slowly. He eventually got to us, and there's a whole other story behind that. But that was my first time actually meeting Pete face to face, and he rescued us from Big Shoal, which was quite the adventure that we had. Next, I'm going to invite up Jeff and Aaron. They are going to be doing a little presentation about the 80 years and the history that they have, and I'm not sure what they have planned, but I'm sure it's going to be good.
If I do that, and then I do that, can you hear me? Well, we're halfway there. That's great. So, I don't know how much you want to know about me and how much you want to know about camp. I'm Aaron Peterson, and of all the different roles that one might have at camp, short of general director, I've been a staff brat, I've been a camper, I've been a bigger camper, I've been an LIT, I've been a cabin leader, I've been out at 4 months, I've been out there as a grown-up volunteer, and I've been out there as a parent, and I've sent my kids out. So I haven't been there for 80 years, but I've been there for quite a while. And there's just no shortage of stories we could tell. So I won't even try. As I was thinking about what do you say, what do you do 80 years, I was thinking about this one tree out on the shores of Shoal Lake, and maybe you know it. There's this one tree, and it's just past the Stuga as you're heading out along the Island Trail and then down to your right a little bit, and it's this big old cedar tree, and it's got big deep roots, and it's got big sweeping branches that come down and are like a canopy. And I've sat under that tree when I was really little. And I still go and I sit out under that tree. And I've sat out under there season in and season out. And I can still easily close my eyes and just feel how I'm cool in the shade with a million little chips of sunlight reflecting off the water. Or I can look up and see the stars peering through. And so when I think about camp, I think about that tree, and it's really easy to do. Because I think about, when I reflect on camp, I reflect on it as a tree. And I think if you want to know what kind of tree it is, how do you know what kind of tree a tree is? You look at its fruit. And I haven't been there for every season, and I don't know every branch and every ring and every part of this camp tree. But I know the fruit that it bears, and I've seen the fruit that it bears in my life and in the life of other people. And so, because I'm certain that it is the same God that has rooted that camp, it's the same God that moves through all of our lives, it's the life of God that makes camp live. That's the life that I tap into when I'm out there. And if I haven't been out there with you, you still know the same stories that I know because you've been to the same camp and you're part of that same place, that same work that God's doing. Now, I don't have a ton of time. We could spend probably forever talking about the good things that God has done at Pioneer, and I think we will. But tonight, we'll keep it short. And I'm going to just remember and reflect a little bit on a conversation that I overheard between Jim Slater, and he was the introduction for my family to camp. Jim Slater from St. Margaret's took us out there, and he told my mom that this place makes leaders. It's just what it does. You almost got the sense that it could not help but create leaders. And having worked there, I kind of know why. It demands leadership, doesn't it? Like, it requires it. And it develops it, and it models it. And Jim was right. And through all the various stages of my life, I have been fed by the leadership of others, and I've had my own leadership capacity nourished in that. And what struck me like a lightning bolt last summer, my kids were heartbroken when they couldn't go out because of COVID, because they had been out from infancy. They had never missed a summer out at camp. Their whole life consisted of camp with vast 11-month interruptions that they would just skip through to get to the next one, and then we couldn't go. And then we could. And then I got to be out there, and I got to watch the look. Well, first of all, let me back it up a little bit. As I was walking around, probably as you've done the same thing, I thought, man, the staff out here are getting younger and younger every year. I can't believe, there's some grown-ups around, but really, look at this. So I was looking out there thinking, man, look at this. Isn't this wonderful, though? Fresh and green leaves on this tree of camp. And there was a few of them, and they were hanging out and just talking whatever it was that they found interesting, and I didn't find it particularly interesting at the time. And so, without really being conscious of it, in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, there's some kids here, and they're on break. We're between session. They're allowed to be kids. And then around the corner came my daughter, and they looked up at these big, tall, awesome, cool camp leaders, and the look in their eyes, the look on their face, this mixture of awe and admiration and desire to grow into whatever it is that this camp leader has been to them, helped me see that person with new eyes. And I thought, wow, they really are cool and big, and I'm ancient. And I see it in the faces of my daughters. I see it in the faces of my nieces. I see it in the faces of my nephews. They just light up, and they're attracted by this very powerful attraction. And it's a good thing. And it doesn't bother me at all. Because I know that this powerful thing that's drawing them in is this leadership that is demanded and developed and modeled, and it's good. Because it is servant leadership. Because the thing that my kids are falling in love with out there is Christ-centered leadership. They're falling in love with a culture and a community that assumes at the very, very bedrock that we become most free in service to others. We become most who we are in community. And that when we are working from a place of love and giving and service, then our capacity to take on and lead with initiative is so magnified. And it is just a really, really beautiful thing that I've seen in my life, and I'm so excited to see it in the lives of my kids and other people that I love. I'm probably running out of time here. It's just that I ask myself, where does this community come from? Like, why does it keep showing up year after year? And I don't mean just this community, but I mean the 80 years of service that have had to happen season after season. And I can only imagine that it is God's answer to prayer. I think we need what camp has to offer, and I think the world around us needs what camp has to offer, and I think that we are drawn and called into this place of loving and warm and real individual connections and networks. And yet I know there's no single person here that can list everybody that's been involved, because it's too big for that. So that's the good fruit that warms my heart and that makes me glad, and that just draws me to give thanks for what camp has been. It has been this legacy of servant leadership that both drives the good work that camp does, and servant leadership is also the fruit that good work bears. And so it moves around and around, on and on, from generation to generation. And I'm just going to echo what Pete said, that the world needs this. It really does. There is such good work that happens at camp, but the good work that happens at camp doesn't stop there. This room isn't as full as it has been in years past. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the pandemic. I don't know. I know that isolation and alienation and disorientation are real problems that we have to deal with. And I have found that the ability to engage with the world from a perspective of real, committed servant leadership is so powerful, so necessary, so needed. There is this great, big, beautiful tree growing on the shores of Shoal Lake, and the world is hungry for its fruit. And that fruit nourishes the staff and the campers and the leaders, but we get to take that fruit, and we get to take it into the world around us, and the world's hungry for it, and the world needs it, and the world benefits from it, and the world is fed from it. and we have access to it. It's been given to us, and we've been asked to carry it forward, and that's worth celebrating. Thanks be to God. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It is a tremendous honor and privilege to be able to share with you and reflect on 80 years of MPC history. And Aaron, thank you for getting us thinking about this fruit and this tree, right? This story. And, you know, as I was thinking tonight about having a chance to share about this, I was thinking about, you know, we kind of had a pact before. We said we wouldn't try to mention a lot of people or try to go, we just couldn't begin going down the route of naming people. But I have to think for a moment when you think of who planted the tree, who was involved right from the very beginning. And I did have to think for a moment just briefly of the camp founders. And I think if any of you have read about camp history, you've kind of got into this a little bit, I had the privilege of meeting Stan and Ann Steinman. I didn't know them well, but I met them. But I never did meet Hugh, Lorne, Duncan McKinnon, right? H.L. McKinnon. And if you've read a little bit, if you know a little bit about camp's story, you know that MPC had its start by the fact that a young girl came to faith in Christ at a camp in Alberta. And InterVarsity staff member Stan Steinman heard about this and said, you know, we really need a camp here in this region where young people can encounter the love of Christ. Because this girl's life was changed, and in fact, her whole family was impacted by her coming to faith. So Stan, of course, shared this at an InterVarsity meeting, and H.L. McKinnon, being on the board of InterVarsity at that time, was a business person and a man of great faith who really caught this vision, okay? Caught his imagination, and he said, you know what? If we could do this, if this camp could become reality, okay, this is in the early 1940s, he would both undergird this work prayerfully and financially. And this was a commitment he made. Well, as you know, that's exactly what he did. And Pioneer had its humble beginnings during World War II, a time of stress and scarcity and war rations. And in that time, it was built, you know, as we know from the stories, from surplus materials from World War II, with very little resources. And yet, this man, H.L. McKinnon, was already known, and he was described as a man of tremendous generosity and great humility. He was often seen during those early years in the background, working tirelessly to eliminate poison ivy from the island. And if you talked and you heard the story of Hildy Leverton, Hildy Leverton would say that he was also seen when he was there on the island, rising early in the dark, sometimes at 6 a.m., to pray over the camp and pray in the front bay that the peace of Christ would pervade the space for all those that could be there. So you think of the tree, and you think of those that were involved from the beginning and the spirit that they brought to the community. And it would seem that, you know, Hildy, who told that story, as with many others, that they would take up that mantle of prayer and of service. And I know there are many, many, many people, many represented even in this room, who are part of taking up that vision. So as Aaron shared just a little bit about the theme of servant leadership, I just wanted to list a couple of other themes really quickly. And what we've heard one already tonight, one theme being, of course, the community life, the shared experience. I don't think there's many camps that are in Canada where you have the experience of the dock. To me, the metaphor of Pioneer is the dock. the welcome, the arrival, the departures, the jubilant welcomes and the tearful goodbyes. And Pioneer, even in this metaphor, has a way of embodying the wide embrace of God's love. Campers, families, staff, and as Pete said, intergenerational friendship. a place where communities can come together, where friendship, shared experience, mentorship of young leaders, intergenerational community. It wasn't always rosy. There was so much about being on an island where you could not escape too easily. It was intense. And yet it was in that crucible, of course, as we heard from Pete, where we make space for others and where belonging and acceptance is that real foundation and a beginning for transformation. So another theme is adventure and experiential learning. Pioneer was and is all about inviting people into an adventure, to be a part of a bigger story. I mean, just the experience of island life, of course, in itself was always an adventure. Just getting there, whether it was back in the old days of the Greater Winnipeg Water District train or Shoal Lake Road, just getting different ways that we would come to the island. The challenge of island life. You know, as the camp developed over the years, that whole theme of adventure and experience was developed, expanded. We can't forget all the different ways of, for me, the challenging river trips, for instance. Originally and primarily for the purpose of developing leaders and training staff. Navigating rivers and rapids, getting lost, pushing through long portages, relying on God, learning to pray. These were unforgettable, life-changing experiences for many of us, and certainly for me. And in a world focused on comfort and self, these experiences often intentionally put you in places of growth, risk, discomfort, where you needed to depend on others, rely on others, and you needed to rely on God. I was thinking as well of this theme of, I think it was Gordon Stewart that talked about this idea of putting young people in a place of real responsibility. I remember Jerem Sawatsky saying to me, he was talking about Albert LeBoon and Albert's influence. He said, mostly Albert teaches people by asking them to do things for which they don't feel ready. Well, how many people could have said that that was something that you experienced at camp at some point? I see a few hands, and certainly was my experience. So experiential education, giving young people real responsibility in an atmosphere of guidance and support from older leaders, all the while to develop their character and their leadership, right? This was kind of inherent from the beginning. And of course, the last theme I want to touch on, as we have heard tonight, is a theme of spiritual growth and faith development. I was always struck by the person who invited me to camp, Hildy, hearing her story and her testimony. And Hildy Leverton would talk about being absolutely overwhelmed by the love of God that she experienced that was so tangible in the lives of the leaders that welcomed her as they spoke together, as they shared meals together, as they worked together. It impacted her in such a profound way. They will know they are Christians by their love. So finally, we think about, as we've heard Aaron talk about, the tree, your famous tree past the Stuga. We think about unique places of solitude and prayer and meditation, where many of us, I think we all could talk about a favorite spot on Shoal Lake or on McKinnon Island or Cache Island, where we had a sense of really experiencing and knowing God's presence. So we want to give thanks tonight for the ways that Pioneer has been used all through these decades to embody the presence and the love of God. And despite, as Aaron said, just the explosion of what we've seen of digital technology and a more divided and anxious and confused, and in some cases lonely society, places like Pioneer can be an oasis of hope, of authentic welcome, connection to creation, and direct encounter to the love of Christ. And I just think, the challenge for me as I thought of this is, may we be like these founders, Stan Steinman, right? and H.L. McKinnon, who were people of faith and vision, responding to the needs of their time as they saw it, and serving with foundations of faith and hope that are only found in Christ. So may we also take up that humble mantle of service and giving, of prayer, and a prayer for the staff this season, that they would also see the peace of Christ pervade these spaces as they welcome children to a life of adventure and faith. And so tonight we give thanks and we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Jeff and Aaron, for that little history and that vision of what Pioneer Camp has been over the last 80 years, and hopefully another 80 years to go. Next, I'm going to be inviting up Nigel Pollock, the president of InterVarsity Canada. He is a very interesting guy to talk to and a very funny person, so come on up, Nigel.
When you say funny, Spencer, do you mean peculiar or do you mean amusing? I'd like to know. It's great to be back in Manitoba. I'm slightly disappointed to be here at the nights the clocks change, because I'll get robbed of an hour tonight. And when I fly back to Ontario tomorrow, I'll get robbed of another hour. So my life has been taken from me before my eyes. My favourite story at the moment was sent to me by a good friend of mine in New Zealand who was a judge. We lived in New Zealand for 13 years, and he was a principal youth court judge. So he sent me a story from the southwest of the States about a brothel that was being planned to be built near a church. And the church objected to the planning permission, but the planning permission was granted. So the brothel was being constructed, and the church began to marshal its efforts against this. So they had regular and fervent prayer against the brothel, and about 2 weeks before the brothel was due to open, it was struck by lightning and completely destroyed. The brothel owner sued the church. And the church's defense was it had nothing to do with them. And my friend sent me a quote from the judge in the case saying it was the first time they could remember looking at a case with a brothel owner who believed in prayer and a church that didn't. And it's really quite interesting how the narrative can change when the stakes change. You know, when things are going well for you, it's easy to have a positive narrative. And when things are harder, there's a cost, it's easy to re-examine the things that you held dear and that were the kind of framework of what you thought. The story of who we are, the narrative of who we are, has to last through good times and bad times. And we have been through some pretty rough times over the last 2.5 years. We've had more kids suffering from depression, from anxiety, struggling with resilience. We've had people who've been lonely, people who've been struggling. We've missed opportunities of connecting with generations in camp and campus. But that doesn't change the narrative of the good news of Jesus and who we are. Who we are primarily, it comes from the story that's here. It's a story of creation, of a couple in love, of a fall from grace, of a fracture in the world, of the battle between good and evil, of a dysfunctional family, of a promised Redeemer coming to die on the cross, of reconciliation and rescue, of a new community, a new family, a new hope, and ultimately of restoration. And our story, in fact, every story, is part of that big story. I studied English literature for 3 years, and basically any story you want to look at in book or film is part of that story. It's a subsection of that story. And for us, it supremely centers on Jesus. Jesus is talking about some of the markers in that story in Luke chapter 18. And he asks a question: will the Son of Man find faith on earth when he returns? Will the Son of Man find faith on earth when he returns? He's just finished talking about the return of Jesus, where 2 people will be in bed and one will be saved and one will be lost, where 2 will be threshing and one will be saved and one will be lost. And then he tells a parable about a persistent widow going to a judge and eventually having her wishes granted because she perseveres. And asking this question, will the Son of Man find faith on earth when he returns, is really a call to persistence, to perseverance, to keep going. And it's good to look back, as we've been doing, and to give thanks for 80 years. But InterVarsity is focused on the future and what God wants to do in this generation to rescue and redeem this generation of young people, to give them a hope and a future, to bring forgiveness and new life. And that, as has been said tonight already, we firmly believe that the only hope of that is found in the person of Jesus, that there is no other name under heaven by which people can be saved. So the answer to the question, will the Son of Man find faith on earth when he returns, is partly found in camp. It's partly found in campus. It's partly found in high school. It's partly found in the key transitions between these things and into work, as young people are intentionally invested in by those who care for them and want to connect them to the God who made them and knows them and loves them. And that's a tremendous opportunity that we have. It's an opportunity that has been part of InterVarsity for over 90 years. InterVarsity started in 1928 as a campus ministry, and the very next year started a camp ministry at Pioneer, Ontario. The idea was that students would go and work with younger people, help them find faith, help them grow in leadership, help them develop discipleship, and then when they went to university, they would join the student group and be the leaders on campus, share good news on campus, and then in the summer go back and help with camp again. It was a brilliant idea in terms of synergy, camp and campus working together. And that's very much one of the distinctives of InterVarsity today, that we believe in interconnected ministry in high school, in camp, in campus, and in workplace, that we're trying to help young people through those key transitions in life over the arc of their growth and development from their early teens to their mid-20s. That's the kind of zone that we're in. And we're about helping them discover Jesus, to develop undivided lives, to grow in influence as they develop gifts of leadership, to think Christianly about what they are doing in their studies and in their work, and to have a concern for God's mission around the world. Will the Son of Man find faith on earth when he returns is really in our hands as we seek to impact the next generation with the good news of Jesus. I've been asked to close tonight by asking you to give. To give to the things that have been mentioned tonight, to the Generation to Generation project, to campus, to camp scholarships for the summer, and to the general fund that covers what we're doing. There are ways that you can give, and the ways are really numerous, and I won't give you a nosebleed by going through them all, but they're going to appear on the screen beside you. But you can basically give electronically or in older-fashioned ways using cheques and using money. Cheques were abolished in the New Zealand banking system 2 years ago completely. So I get kind of culture shock when people bring out their checkbook. Our landlord made us write 12 forward-dated cheques for our rent in Toronto. It's like, is this 1978? You know, what's going on here? But You can even give with money if you want. Apparently that's still used in some parts of the world as well. So there are various kind of ways you can give electronically using the envelopes that are on the chairs, or find Neil Stewart and put things into his pockets that he can sell on eBay and give you a receipt for gifts in kind. You know, we're not fussy, we'll take anything. But I don't just want to ask you to give. I want to ask you to consider giving. And by what I mean by that is to actually think about the significance of making a gift to camp this year, about celebrating what's gone before and investing in what's coming later. Don't just make an emotional response, make a considered response. And the considered response is, what is God calling you to give? And how is God calling you to pray? And how is God calling you to volunteer and help within that kind of overall framework? I hope you will all enter into considered giving. But I want to ask you to think about giving generously. That the opportunity is there. What we want to see happening in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, through the work of the camp and its reach, is to extend the number of young people that we contact with and deepen the work of God that we do in their lives. And that broadening our reach and deepening our impact is only really possible through partnership, which is generous, which doesn't look for the minimum, but thinks about how can I really invest in this work. I didn't come to Canada because I was looking for a job or because I was fed up with life in New Zealand and didn't want to go back to Scotland. I came to Canada because I genuinely believe that InterVarsity is one of the most strategic and significant works of God in any nation in the world. And that in Canada, we're uniquely placed to do something significant in the lives of young people. So I hope that you will consider giving generously. And beyond that, I want to ask if one or two of you might, on this celebration of the 80th anniversary of all that God has done, be being called to significant giving, being called to give something above and beyond what you would normally think about as a thank offering and as a celebration of what has gone before, but to invest in what is coming next. In case you haven't noticed, we have a fantastic team here in Manitoba. Neil and Sharon are two of the best camp directors we have. We've got Pete with all his kind of influence. We've got the other folks you saw on stage. We've got the campus staff working alongside them. There's a great group of people. There's an even bigger group of volunteers and student leaders and folks that are there. But they need investment in order to be able to maximize the time and the gifts that God has given them to invest in this next generation of young people. So I do want to thank you for your investment in camp and campus and the many different ways that you contribute. It's always a delight to be in Manitoba, and I know a day away from Manitoba is a day wasted for many of you, but it's a privilege to kind of be here and to enter into this community. And Ailsa and I have really enjoyed the times that we've been out to Pioneer, Manitoba. It is a special place. But the 80th anniversary is really a time more than anything to give thanks to the special God and to the story that he is working in the lives of this next generation and his desire that the Son of Man would find faith on earth when he returns. So I want to thank you for your partnership thus far and ask that it would grow going forward, and ask that you would consider giving, that you would give generously, and that one or two of you would give extravagantly. God bless you. The other message of that story that I told at the beginning is Be careful what you pray for. It might get you into a lot of trouble.
Thank you, Nigel. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This has been a wonderful event, and to be able to come back together as a community this spring. I know it's a bit snowy outside and not quite spring yet. Very soon, hopefully. But thank you for coming in through the snow and the storm. Some of you have traveled very far, and some of you have trekked through the snow, so thank you for coming. We need the door prize jar. It's coming. So we do have a door prize, as many of you know. It is a camp swag, and so we're gonna pull that momentarily. Here comes Neil. Can I get, is Atalia in here still? Oh, she's not. Let's get, I'm trying to look for a camper. I don't see any. Amelia, come on up. I found you. Okay, we're gonna get Amelia to pull it.
Yes, I'm just mixing it up. Don't worry. You know me, I like to mix things up.
Yes. Okay. So in here we have a couple mugs. We have a water bottle, a cookbook. There's some recipes from tonight in there. A hoodie. Some good stuff.
Yep.
Okay, you ready, Amelia? Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
The mic is yours.
Wendy Couchier. I think.
That's awesome. Okay, I swear it's my mother. It's not rigged. Yes, I want to thank all those who made this event possible, our volunteers who came out and served, the people who were here yesterday, prepping the food, people who came early, people who are going to help tear down later. And I want to thank you all for coming. It's been a great event to see all friendly faces, new and old, and see people coming together after time of being away during COVID. I'd also like to thank the Winnipeg Evangelical Free Church for letting us use this space and for hosting us so well. And just thank you for your continued support throughout these 80 years and support throughout the summer to come and the years to come. Some reminders is that, what time is it right now, guys?
9:36.
9:36. So I'm going to say the silent auction ends at 9:45, or let's say 9:50. I'll give you a few more minutes. So you guys can go check out the silent auctions that we have. It's about halfway up the hallway with the balloons beside it. We have a dinner made by Sharon and a stay in the Stuga for 2 nights. So you go check those out, see if you want to bid on anything. And make sure you pick up your children from childcare. This is not camp. They're not staying overnight or for a few days. And yes. Yes, and Neil, go ahead.
Sorry, slightly unexpected. I wanted to thank you all for coming out. I also want to thank all the volunteers who made this possible. I want to thank Sharon for all of her hard work and the great job that she did this evening. It really is y'all coming back over and over again that makes this all possible. And it really encourages us to have our community around us and to hear all the amazing stories and to see you interacting with our staff. And so thank you so much for coming out. And I'm just going to end this with prayer. Lord Jesus, I thank you so much for this community. I thank you for these 80 years. I thank you for this moment right now where I get to say thank you to this community for all the work that we've seen you do through us and around the island. And I just pray that you give us safety as we go home and that you prepare us for what you have in store. Amen. Thank you, everyone.